Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome to Field and Foley. Today, my guest is Gina Zdanowicz, Emmy-nominated composer, sound designer, and founder of Serial Lab Sounds, a bespoke audio production studio delivering high-quality sound for games, film, TV, and all interactive media. With 20 years in the industry, Gina and her team's work spans from indie gems to AAA giants like BioShock 2 and Just Cause 3. She's also a passionate educator and mentor and co-author of the Game Audio Strategy Guide, helping shape the next generation of audio professionals. Gina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. This is basically a second part because we already had a live event at Airwiggles. For people that missed that, you can watch the replay live online. Lots of nice little tidbits there. But I, of course, had some questions open. And I wanted to talk about just your sound work in general, not just the business side of it. So maybe you can start a bit with what you're working on at the moment, or what you recently worked on, what you really enjoyed, something you had like fond memories of.
Oh, yeah. Fond memories. Well, I think I'm celebrating 20 years doing this now, so it's kind of exciting. So there's lots of good memories. I think one of my earlier memories was when I was asked to work on BioShock 2 as part of the voice production team, because that was just very exciting, right? It was like my first AAA game, just being a part of, a large project like that. And also I love the original BioShock. And I was able to work with my friend and colleague, Jason Cantor. He's a fantastic audio director with a really good ear. So that always brings a top memory for me. I was able to work with him on Just Cause 3, and so doing sound design, music editing, and implementation there as well. So I think over the years we've worked on quite a few projects together, and it's always nice learning from him, and I always feel like I level up each time that we do a project together. We've actually just did a project in the National Medal of Honor Museum in Texas. It's a VR project. It's a nice. It's a Vietnam experience, trying to give it, people that coming to the museum an experience of what it was like to be a part of the rescue missions, the UE rescue missions. So that was
intense.
Yeah, it was intense. Lots of chopper sounds and weapons. But also the kind of interesting part of it was figuring out reality versus, experience and entertainment. Yeah, because, obviously, like, there's still some Medal of Honor people who had gone through those missions that'll come to the museum. And if we get, the sound of like the low RPM, chopper alarm wrong, they're going to notice that. But also we've got to update the sound so that it fits, for the younger audience that are coming in and, experiencing. So it was kind of an interesting blend there.
That's interesting. Did you have like some consultants on there then that gave you like some pointers?
Yeah, actually the experience leader who was kind of putting the whole thing together visually and sonically, he would reach out to some of the veterans and kind of, ask them what they're expecting. And then we took our experience with entertaining people, through other games we worked on and made, our best kind of shot at a blend in between.
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds like an interesting project for sure. I mean, yeah, it's these grounded in reality things, but just like you said, you want to update it so it's impactful enough so that it gets the point across, right? So you need to find that balance. That sounds like an interesting balancing act.
Yeah, and also all of the references we were given were these old videos, that were then uploaded to YouTube. So we would get, the sound of like a UE chopper, and they'd say, we expect it to sound like this. But it was very like degraded and kind of filtered, from just being very old recording. So we had to explain to them that, we have to make it feel like a now experience with the fidelity that we have, but also kind of hinting at those little, I guess, like the texture elements that come from being in the chopper. So getting all of that right was really interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, alone, like being in a chopper, there's so many little sounds, so many little things happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably unexpected things as well. And as you mentioned, Just Cause 3, I just had to like smile because I've put, I don't know, I think maybe 60 or 80 hours into it because
Nice.
it was just my go-to relaxed game at that point when it came out. It's like just like, yeah, just a bit of mayhem and just zipping around and flying around and like all these kinds of little sounds like the zip line you have to attach stuff to each other and
Yeah.
just the over the top action sounds were so satisfying. So yeah, well done, of course, to the whole team, but also to you now that I have someone in front of me that worked on that.
Yeah.
That was great work for sure.
Yeah, lots of chaos, right? Lots of explosions, crashes, vehicle crashes. So loads of sounds that go into it. It was, I was really grateful for the experience. It was such a large project. And, I just jumped in and joined the existing team, kind of helped them over the finish line of, the last year of development. So it was really fun.
Nice. Yeah, you were probably then there also in the fine tuning and mixing stage. And one of the questions I right away off the bat have is like, how do you handle that kind of mayhem? Because there's so many loud and over the top sounds, but it all sounds like cohesive and stuff still cuts through the mix. I mean, of course, I know there's a lot of techniques, but that must have been a really challenging thing to get right.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, you have those, there are those big, like, gas containers that are just sitting out in some of the areas. And if you hit one of them, they all explode, right? So there's a sound attached to each one, obviously. So we had to do a lot of, working. We actually used FMOD for that. And we had to do a lot of working with, the number of sounds that can trigger at one time, right? So the priority of sounds. So if all 6 would trigger, we would maybe do like 3. Otherwise, it would just be this big, cacophony of explosion. So they, they did a lot of making sure, like testing at like 30-minute intervals, to make sure that we're hitting a very specific, target LUFs. So it is a lot of work in the mixing stage to make sure everything feels really balanced. It can be pretty tricky in that case. Also thinking about frequencies, right? The idea of, scooping out music where maybe explosions might happen. But also some of the explosions and things were tonal. They had tonal elements to them. So we had to make sure that, the composer was keeping, in mind that we had to stick within a similar key. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. A lot that goes into it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of things, man. That is just I'm just thinking about all the pitfalls of that, just like you mentioned, also the music and everything. It's a big thing. So, yeah, congrats on that. And maybe anything you can tell us, maybe an indie game you worked on or a small project you worked on that people might not be aware of that you really, really enjoyed. Because I always love to like shine a little spotlight on that. And from time to time, people tell me like, oh, I worked on this game a few years ago and I've never heard of it. And then I pick it up and it's actually amazing. So maybe we can give people some inside scoop.
Yeah. If you've ever heard of the game Eternights by Studio Psy.
I've heard of it, but I haven't played it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one was interesting for us. We worked with the developer, Jaehoon, on a title called Best Luck. And Best Luck was a very indie, kind of just a small, I think it was on the App Store and itch. It was a really small puzzle game. And we had worked on that with him. And he brought Spencer Bambrick and myself onto Eternights. And initially it was, he was trying to get it funded. And Sony ended up picking it up for marketing in the end. So we got it to PlayStation 5. It was really interesting because it's a hack and slash dating sim game. So I've never worked on something like that before. And I also didn't do a lot with anime styles. And so it was interesting getting those exaggerated effects, like the rhythmic timing, really to match the animation. So it was a challenge, but also felt really good, to complete the project and kind of see it all come together.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna check that out. I just made a note here because it's always interesting if I don't know something.
Yeah. We also just finished up a match 3 that's coming to mobile. It has a brand tie-in, but it's in soft launch in Canada at the moment, so I can't really talk too much about it. But I just wanted to say that it's kind of fun when you get to work with multiple teams. So you have like the brand IP team, and then you have the developers team. So it's challenging to get both teams on the same page. And I've always thought about that, like in those like Lego games, right? Like you have Lego Batman or Lego Jurassic Park. It's always got to be a challenge to make sure that each side is getting, their sort of sonic identity in there, and making all of that work. So that was a lot of fun. It'll be exciting to announce that when we're able to.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, that's also something I always wondered. Like with the Lego games, they're already like they found their niche and people are enjoying them. But there's such a long history of branded games that were just really, really bad. And I mean, in the beginning, especially from video games, I'm guessing it was also about budget and times constraints, because I've heard from many like development veterans from back then that sometimes games would be like develop in 2 months or something like that, which is by today's standards is just preposterous if you're not like a single developer that makes a really, really small game jam game. And but yeah, there's a lot of those are just feels like the brand just wanted to have the brand there and had no idea about how like gameplay should look, how that should work. So it always felt a bit like this shouldn't be a game. That should be maybe an advertisement, a movie or something. So yeah, getting that combination together is always something that's, if it works, it can be amazing. Like in the case for Cyberpunk, for example, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix show, but that I loved Netrunners. Like it's so good. If it's done right, it's can be amazing. But I can imagine, just like you said, you have these two competing or like two different viewpoints on one project. So yeah. And let's speak a bit more about your audio business as well, because just like you mentioned, you're celebrating 20 years. Like, congrats again, because that's quite a feat, especially in this industry. Being still here and being successful is no small feat. And also because we had a lot of questions already in the Abrigals chat, but at some point we just ran out of time.
Yeah.
So, let's just continue here. I have a few questions noted down. So one of the things that is really interesting to me, and probably also to people that start out, is do you have some idea of like unexpected costs or issues that arose that people should know about in the beginning that they might be not expecting?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And a lot of people consider things like software, plugins, subscriptions, your hardware that you might need. But I think people tend to forget things like business insurance, like errors and omissions insurance, gear insurance. So if you have like a hardware failure, or if there's, gear is damaged in a flood or whatnot. But then there's also the legal contracts, and, even IP licensing issues. I was lucky enough to, early on, I had a friend who started her business about 2 years before I started mine. And it made it easy for me to kind of learn based off of the stuff she was learning. So
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, because there was also taxes.
So
taxes, right? The idea that here in the United States, you have to put aside, a percentage depending on your tax bracket. So you have to go and, you have to have a look to see what the brackets are. And then you have to put aside like 25 to 30% or 35 to 40, depending on where the income is. And I'm not a CPA, but that's just like the general rule I followed. And then you have to pay, your tax every, the expected tax every quarter. But then also another thing that I think people often overlooked is a hidden cost really is scope creep, right? And revisions. Those extra rounds of feedback that you didn't initially account for, those can really eat into your margin. And I actually, I had a big lesson regarding that when I quoted for I think it was 50 sound effects and 5 music tracks. And in the end, it turned out that they needed 5 sound effects and the rest were VO. And they wanted a few different voices, but they wrote it down in our agreement as sound effects. And it turned out that I had to then hire voice artists, and I think they wanted 4 of them. So that blew up my sound effects budget. So that was a very tricky thing.
Yeah, so always have clear contracts.
Yes.
But yeah.
I always ask now, are you sure it's no VO? And people are probably sick of hearing it, but it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also with like musicians as well, right? If you have just like let musicians record that live. So, that's another budget entirely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I can just also say from the EU standpoint, or at least from German standpoint, it's a bit similar. Like you also have to account for paying taxes on your earnings at the end of the year. So that can be a big big chunk of money that you owe then. So that you should account for that. And one other thing for at least for Germany is like health insurance, because that can also be depending on what you earn and where you are and what kind of business you are. It's very complicated here, but I think the gist of it is get someone who already has a company probably
Yes.
to get some advice and and calculate a lot of that in. And that brings me also to the next question is what kind of failures did you deal with like at the beginning of your business that newcomers should also be aware of?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the idea of failing on that, where I had to pay voice artists out of my sound budget, which then was obliterated. Things like that would happen in the very beginning. I would also undervalue my work. I didn't know what to charge, right? And when you're undercharging, you're thinking low prices might attract work or attract business, but it can lead to burnout, and then you get clients who don't value your work. And I think there's an interesting story of how I knew I was undervaluing my work, because I landed a gig and we were doing some work with this one team. And one day I get this email and it said, hey, I can recommend Gina and her team to you. They're very cheap, but they're really good. And then a little bit later, I got another email that said, I'm so sorry you weren't meant to be on that. And it was really nice because he was, recommending me to someone else. But I realized that, I'm too cheap. So
Yeah, that was actually a good heads up, right?
Yes, I appreciated it, so I wasn't mad.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I think you should never be mad about that, because it wasn't like a cheap shot, because he said you were really good. Just, inexpensive. Would be the better word, but
yeah, exactly right. I think like cheap probably if it was swapped out with a kinder word.
But I mean, it's a quick word you just typed that can happen.
Exactly.
But yeah, I can absolutely attest to that as well. And sometimes even what's interesting is that I had the experience of on the other side, being in a company and having different offers in front of us, and hearing like the deciding person saying like, oh, this price is way too low, I don't think they're gonna deliver the quality, right? So that is also something people should maybe be aware of, depending on what your niche is. Of course, if you're trying to make like just quick and fast things and have things like, okay, we have one revision or no revision or something, like a Fiverr kind of job, that's fine. But if you're looking to do like actual long-term sound work, maybe also creative direction at some point, stuff like that, know your worth and also like communicate that is like a premium thing that can also help you at that point.
Yeah,
and
I think it's an art, right? Figuring out what you're worth and how much to charge is really an art. And I think, I'm still figuring it out. It's like, it definitely gets easier, but, I think it's ever evolving. I think that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also always depends on the circumstances and what kind of project it is, how much fun you're going to have working on it, stuff like that. Everything connects to that. And I think I also mentioned it in the Airworkers thing, but in case I didn't, like there's a really great talk from Nathan Moody about how to like set your rates and everything. He breaks it down very, very in detail, and just not the actual numbers, but the process, which is so much more helpful.
Yeah.
Because it also depends on the area you live in and so on. And but maybe if you want to go into a bit of details, how do you typically break down fees? Do you do like a lump sum per project, or do you have like hourly rates, or does it depend on what kind of gig you have?
Yeah, it really depends on the gig that we have. Some, we do fixed rates, but we really got burned on fixed rates on one project a while back. And we learned that if we do fixed rates, the contract has to be really dialed in. And that means, end dates and working hours and an asset list of what we're going to. So everything has to be clearly defined for fixed rates. I think that's really important. What ended up happening was we didn't have an exact date, or the wording wasn't super correct. And so the other team's lawyer basically said, well, you can have them until you consider the project done. So we ended up working on the fixed rate for an extra year of development. Oof. Not fun. Very.
No, that is definitely not fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's also we already talked about the contract thing, but one thing maybe we should specifically mention is also not just the fixed dates, but also what you expect to be there, right? Because I also had the issue said to me by a friend of mine that they had the problem, they had to deliver something until a certain date, but they didn't get all the assets they needed until like 2 weeks before. So they had essentially a month of waiting, nothing happening, nothing to do. and then like 2 weeks of just cramming stuff out. So yeah, that's what I always try to communicate is like, hey, whenever I get everything I need for that, from then on, this is the timeline, right? So yeah, be very specific with these timelines and also with the prerequisites. That's very important.
Yeah, we
also,
have
I
that
think,
in our contract now because of that being burned by that project. So yeah, if they, we need 2 weeks after you deliver X assets. So
Yeah.
you can even set like a time how much you need after you get the assets to complete it.
Exactly, yeah, that's really good. And also, of course, on the end card of that, you need to be really clear when something is considered done. Like, if I
Yes.
get the okay from this single person, and it should always be a single person, very important.
Yeah.
Then then this is considered done, and everything else is considered revisions. Whatever revisions are, it could be that 2 revisions are free. It could be that you say you charge for revisions. Doesn't matter, but yeah, really make sure that this stuff is clear. And I know contract work can be like kind of mind-numbing, depending on how much fun you have with that. But
Yeah.
maybe invest in a lawyer or just bang something out. But it's it should be as detailed as you can make it.
Yeah, I think having a lawyer, early on, I didn't have a lawyer, and that made it
Yeah.
really difficult to navigate. Once we spent the money on a lawyer, it was really helpful to just understand what each part of the contract is and how we could sort of try to turn it into our favor. And obviously, you have to make sure that the other side agrees, and they'll have someone trying to turn it in their favor. But in the end, I think it's a really important investment that a lot of people don't often think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially just like if you get your first big gig from a big company, let someone with like actual knowledge of the law read over the contract and give you the gist of it, because there's sometimes these hidden things where it's like, this reads like this to me, but it means something completely different. So yeah,
Absolutely.
very important.
And also
I mean,
find
yeah.
in the US, I find that from state to state, it can be slightly different in how it's interpreted as well. So that's kind of another gotcha.
Yeah, that would also be my next question pertaining to that. Like, what are the things you look out for when you work with international clients? Like, do you do like a big, like, I don't know, do you have lawyers in every country that you can just chat to and say like, hey, can you look over this contract for me? Or what's your go-to thing to deal with that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So the current lawyer that we have, he basically has some like contacts in other areas, but not all areas. So it really kind of depends where our clients are. I think that's a really tricky thing because the idea of business dynamics are very different, right? And and then local laws and things like that can be very different. I do find though that with international clients, the clients always they don't want to hire someone that then they're going to have to, if there's a problem, they're going to have to come out to where they are and bring a whole team and settle it. So most of the time you end up kind of bending to some of their sort of requests in the contract. And I'd say as long as you're covering yourself with your lawyer, making sure that like deadlines are reached, or are clear, not reached, but if they're clear, any kind of currency conversions, making sure that payment platforms are really sorted out because, as if you work with international, you get paid, there could be large fees. So who pays this, right?
Exactly,
Those kinds of things. I think all of that's really important when you are working with international clients. And we did actually have an international team early on in our career we worked with, and they had this big Kickstarter that got loads of money, and they were, they had, gone off and said, do you want to do this as like a per asset or do you want to do a retainer? So we ended up doing a retainer, and we set our, specific hours and what amount of stuff that we're going to do. But the retainer was kind of nice, but also you have to be mindful not to have the retainers be with such a long time in between of payment, because ours was every month that we were paid. And it turned out that someone mismanaged funds, and we ended up not getting paid for the last month. Luckily, I had some weird, I kind of always have these good like intuitions. So I had this gut feeling. So I took the 2 people off my team that were working, and I only did the work going forward. So this way I only lost my time.
Nice.
It's a lot of time, but
Yeah, but still.
Yeah.
Like you as the boss took the risk, so that's yeah, very good.
Yeah, and we ended up just when the company folded, we ended up just walking away with the loss because it didn't make sense for me to go out there and try to then hire a lawyer there and
No.
fight this. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to, take the loss in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that also ties in very, very good into my next question because we talked about so many caveats now. So if you had to start your career from scratch again today, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think so. There's lots of things that I would do right now, knowing everything that I know. The idea of the business side of things, I would, treat my creative career like a business from day one. I think, making sure that I'm, figuring out the tracking finances, setting rates confidently, really marketing myself with intention. I think it's really important. And it's something that when I first started, I just, thought like, this is going to be cool. I'm going to be making sounds. The other thing too, I think is, I would have built a team sooner. I think in the very beginning, it took me a while to realize that doing everything myself wasn't a strength, right? It was a bottleneck. There was one project that I got. We were doing some trailer music, or it was me actually, just at the time. I was doing some trailer music, and I'm no good with banjo, programming banjo, or even playing it. And for some reason, instead of hiring out someone to just do that banjo part, I just figured I'll take this on myself. They won't mind that the banjo is the weakest part of this whole score. But they did mind, and that was a big lesson that I learned. Again, I was kind of young in the career, and I realized that, if you have to pay someone else to come in and be the expert, it's worth it compared to losing the project. Because then in the end, they were like, oh, we're not going to work with you. And I never worked with them again. So that was a huge lesson. It was a really important takeaway from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally attest to that. I mean, I'm also at the stage now where I'm looking for people and hopefully like I'm going more into the direction of making just little collabs here and there,
Yeah.
which I find interesting. But for me especially, it's also part of the kind of work with someone else. At least one other person is, at least for me, already more fulfilling because I have someone that brings in new ideas. And like, I don't know, when I commit something or upload something, they most of the time they give me feedback. It's like, oh, that's so cool, you did that and that and stuff like that. How did you do that? And then we like chat about how we do stuff. So we learn from each other. We like fuel each other's creativity, and I feel it's overall a more fluid thing. Yeah, I'm guessing we're all at the base point, we're all craving human connection. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing that is it. But yeah, that really also feeds into your work. So yeah, if you can, maybe find someone, and especially if you can find someone that you're not just vibing with, but that also does stuff that you don't either are not good at, just like you mentioned with the banjo, or you don't like doing. Like, for example, if you hate implementing and you have someone that's like, I don't want to design sounds or run around the woods anymore, but you want to. So yeah, find someone does that, and then start with some little project and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the whole business thing is something that's always a bit scary. I mean, we already talked about this now. We're talking about lawyers, about contracts, about like keeping enough money so all these unexpected costs rise up. So yeah, how do you not like lose your cool with all that pressure?
Yeah, it can be really difficult. And I think over the years, I remember some very stressful times. But I also realized that I had worked in companies, before I started the business. There was a few like sort of, jumping into just pay the bills before I got into what I was really going after. And I realized that, there's challenges there as well. And in the end, I was happy to really just kind of, push forward with my passion. This something I felt like I wanted to do this since I was a kid. I always was very interested in, sound and music and love video games. And it just felt like the right path for me. And it's not going to be for everyone. I think there are some people that are going to be much happier working, in a company that finds the work for you, has, your paychecks coming in, they take the taxes out, they handle all of that for you, have your health insurance. Yeah. So I try to always, when I get down, with certain things that come up, especially our ever evolving industry, right, where it's very volatile. Over those 20 years, I've seen lots of good times and bad times. But I always try to think, how can I make this better? And, and this is something that I'm going to continue to do no matter what. So I think you have to kind of have that passion in order to push past some of those really stressful times in that case.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the passion is what fuels everything. I mean, it's the same for me also with like all the all the stuff in Germany with all the bureaucracy and everything. But still, the passion keeps me in this kind of line of work. Yeah, and then speaking of like the current market is a harsh one, right? We have a lot of companies that like fail to get funding or trying to get funding, publishers that don't want to take risks. So a lot of people are looking for work. A lot of freelancers are looking for work. So yeah, this is maybe a bit of a weird question, but how do you like deal with competition around you? What is your relationship with the competition? Is it like a friendly one, or is it I have to find my certain niche so I can stand out? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I always like to think of competition as friends, not threats. We're all part of this, the same ecosystem. We face the same challenges. And I found that collaboration and referrals and mutual support goes a lot further than I've got to beat out this person. And I think some of our, biggest opportunities came from people that you might label as competitors. So I think there's room for everyone when you focus on, just trying to really do great work and build trust with your clients. I think, it goes a long way in terms of not burning bridges, right? So if I'm constantly saying, I've got to be better than this one person, I think just as a whole, it kind of there's this little bit of like hate inside of me, which isn't good, right? And so that's not going to make me better at what I do in my work. So I try to always just look at, I try to be happy for people and their opportunities, their achievements. And then I find that when you're kind to people, that often comes back to you in some way. It might be that they refer you on a new project they're on, or when you're down, you can help them. Oh, sorry. When you're down, they can help you. And then if they're down, you can help them. So I try to really look at it that way and, just kind of try to be kind to all in that sense.
Yeah, it's the same here. Really interesting point of view to say that like if you have that inside you, then you have this hate inside you, and that's not a way to live your life or to also to approach your career. And that's a really good point. Because I also always had this kind of mindset of when I see something that is not for me, but I know someone who would be perfect, I always try to recommend people.
Yeah.
And it has happened in the past for a few people that I've like gotten them some deals or a job, and I'm always really happy for them because like I wouldn't have been happy with the job anyway, right? So it's better for everyone. So why wouldn't I be happy? But of course, on the other side, it's also something like, okay, but I still have to get my clients. I have to get some kind of income because I have to live. So walking that rope is kind of an interesting thing. And maybe we can go a little bit into the marketing part of that. So you have to be out there and you have to be visible. So how important is it for your business, like social media in today's world? What platforms are like your go-to things? Do you focus on one or maybe on many? What is your take on that?
I think for marketing, it's mostly we rely on a referral network. And I think that comes from just years of building up a network of people that we've worked with, that worked with us. And it kind of gets to the point where it becomes a bit automated, where there's, a nice flow of people saying, hey, Gina and her team can do this. Please reach out. We also have people who we've worked with in the past that pop up now and then. They don't always do like very large projects, but they have something, small that they do. There's also, the idea of like targeted outreach, right? So going on social media and kind of just showing what you're doing. The challenge with social media, though, is that it's really like almost like a part-time job, right? So you have to, you can't just be posting stuff and shouting out into the void. It's got to be valuable content to people, and it also you have to do it consistently. So that's a tricky thing. I think spending time, and I think we could do social media better. We probably have to hire someone dedicated to do that. I do have someone that takes care of like the website and the CEO or SEO. And basically, I think like for social media, it's mostly me. Like I'll post things of like projects we're doing, or if we go to like award shows. But I also post things about my cats, and I also try to repost, friends' businesses or people that are, struggling right now, looking for, jobs with the current layoffs, kind of going on LinkedIn and reposting some of their stuff so that hopefully it just helps kind of make them more visible. I think social media, we could do a better job. We do have like Instagram and we do have a Facebook and also on LinkedIn, but I think we're on Blue Sky as well. But I think, like I said, we have to do better there, but it is a commitment, right? It's, you have to figure out a niche way of getting people interested in seeing the content that you do. That's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, just like you said, getting people interested, but it's also like, are these people that you're getting interested the ones that are going to pay you for your work then? Because you could build a career of like just making interesting content, right? You could be a YouTuber making, this is how I make sounds, but you won't necessarily, I mean, at some point if you're big enough, of course, but necessarily won't like reach people that will like, build an indie game and want to hire you for sound. So it's for me it's the same. Like I'm struggling with trying to find the right balance, but I always want to be consistent. At least I have this podcast which is consistent, which is going strong, but otherwise I also have my daily like morning LinkedIn round where I check especially I think most of the time I just repost and like other stuff because I just want to see what people do and if someone's looking for, but just like you said, I like to help them and reach out. I think the most important thing is just like you mentioned, being consistent, just constantly doing stuff, even if you're just doing once a week or something, doesn't matter.
It just has to be consistent and valuable in some way to whoever your audience is. A lot of times my social media posts, like we'll post something we've done and it's like a family member, like, way to go, Gina, so they're not going to hire me. It's really nice, but I have found though that outside of social media, I would say communities like IMDb, or not IMDb, it's IndieDB and ModDB, right? Those have forums on there, and we found a lot of success in the beginning. There was one that was Indie Gamers Forum, and I don't think it's still live, but the IndieDB and the ModDB are great. They have these forums, and I would just go on every Monday, and I would make a post saying, like, we're available for work, and we've got quite a few bites from that. I think that's also important. But it was consistency, right? So we had to once a week we were posting something and making sure that our post stayed at the top of those forums.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like these niche forums, I'm hoping and or guessing they will come back because as we are starting to learn, or I would rather say younger people that don't know this yet are starting to learn, is that the enshittification is happening to every service. So there's a lot of social medias that were great in the beginning and is now just like full of ad and spams and everything. And I think especially with the rise of AI and getting that cheaper, you can like flood a business with or a website with so many fake accounts, making it just not valuable for anyone anymore. And I think that's also why like communities like Airwiggles, just like you mentioned, and like private Discord servers or like almost private public Discord servers are hitting it off because people want to talk to real people and maybe to a smaller community and not to like everyone in the whole world anymore. I mean, it was fun in the beginning, but it gets really grating at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, I know for myself, I've been staying off of social media quite a bit because it's just becoming too stressful, right? There's a lot of like just things out there to kind of sensationalize or just to get clicks. And it's a lot of noise to cut through. So unless I go there specifically looking for something, like I type in like, like food journeys or like cats, it's really, you just get lots of stuff, and the algorithm's always changing. I noticed that, depending on like what I'm looking at, then I start to get some things that I'm like, I'm not even really into this. I don't know why it's like, the algorithm has chosen this for me. But I noticed like some of that happens. So it's really just kind of overcrowded. And like you said, there's the smaller communities are making a comeback again, which is really nice because there's a lot less noise to cut through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also something that I've noticed. I always was a big fan of YouTube because of the many like different facets of it, like people talking about history or people showing how they like build stuff mechanically, or like so many little things, very specific things that you can find. And in the beginning, this was really interesting because it wasn't so crowded anymore. But nowadays, it's like every, I don't know, 6 months or something, I might find a video where it's like, oh, this is amazing. I've never
Yeah.
heard of this person. And then he has like, I don't know, 400 views. And I think like, why? I mean, it's so interesting. It's about a very specific thing. They talk about how they do this, and like, it's so engaging content, but I just can't like find it anymore, which is, it's really, yeah, it's really frustrating. So I'm also like navigating more to the smaller communities, but the downside to that is really that this kind of exploration gets a bit lost, right? Because you have to find those communities by yourself and see like, okay, I'm interested specifically in this. And like before I found, for example, the Tasting History YouTube channel, I don't know if you know it. It's like before that, I didn't know I wanted to like see someone cook medieval meals. And
Yeah.
now I know it's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a kind of a shame. But we will see how that brings. But yeah, just as for your business goes, maybe also try to stick to whatever platform that you're either most connected with or that you like using most. Don't just post on every platform. I did this in the beginning and it was very stressful. It was like some platforms didn't like let you schedule stuff, and then you spend like hours just setting up posts and
Yeah.
just shooting it into the void in all these different platforms, and like you cannot comment on every of these posts, so it's, yeah, it gets watered down anyway. So I try to now focus more on just a few of them. Yeah, and then yeah, when you get a lead then and you start to contract negotiate with clients, do you have any tips on how to negotiate with clients without scaring them off?
Yeah, I think that can be tricky because you want to show that you're flexible, so the conversation doesn't hit a dead end, right? You want to show that you want to be a partner, not just a vendor, right? So someone, just a faceless person that they're hiring. So I always try to add in a bit of flexibility, and I think that can be helpful when you're talking about rates, because maybe, a lot of times indie devs might come and say like, well, how much do you charge? And really, I always try to reframe the conversation and say, well, what's your budget? Because if they have a budget and other people are getting paid, it's typical in the industry for sound to have 5 to 10% set aside. So if they come back and say, oh, I didn't put aside anything for audio, then I know that maybe this isn't someone that I'm going to work with, or can I convince them for a revenue share? So that's tricky. And I think there's like ways that you can kind of, lead the conversation gently by just being transparent and say, I think, this is, I can tell you what we normally charge, but to be honest, it's usually like 5 to 10% of the full budget. What is your full budget? And typically, if they'll be willing to say it to you, then you at least know, can I work within 5 or 10% of that? And will they give you the 5 or the 10 or somewhere in between? So I find that's a good way of showing that you're willing to be a partner and, not just looking for a number. But you have to hold your value, right? So you want to say, I'm willing to adapt, but you also don't want to race to the bottom. And you can talk about things like, well, you're looking for 10 music tracks, but you only have X number of dollars. That's not going to be enough for us to get over that finish line. How about if we do like 5 tracks, right? How can we make that work and figure out like a music system that, can work that way? Maybe some layering that can come in and out and that can, extend the use of or the life of the track. Maybe you can break it up into like branches, right? So that you can just trigger like different sections like A, B, C section, and they can just trigger randomly so that it, you can get more out of the loop. So I think things like that need to be part of your negotiation skills, and really just practicing conversation, because that's what it is really in the end, like a conversation. You can't get like overheated about it, right? You can't be too accommodating. So you have to find that middle of the road. And I think that's something that just takes practice. I know for me, I would say, oh, I can't, we're not going to be able to work on this at that budget. And And so instead of just blowing up right away, at least try to find a way that, they can come and meet you halfway in that case.
Yeah, I can really relate to that as well. Like this is always also my kind of go-to thing for indies. Like, what's your budget, or rather, like, hey, what do you want out of this? What kind of scope do you have? I really like your project. Let's just find a way of working together. And just like you said, like, yeah, if they now want like 20 music tracks and a whole system, that has a certain amount of cost. But either you adapt the cost or you adapt the scope. And if both don't work, like, yeah, don't be afraid to walk away as well, because you don't want to be caught in a project where you're working so many hours for very little money. And I mean, of course, it's nice to have this kind of on your record and be part of a good game. But like some points, especially for indie developers, they might not know what kind of work is behind even just like setting up the basic music system and a sound system. Because depending on what kind of game they have, that could be already so many hours just setting that all up, making it work, talking to the programmer, making these kinds of back and forth talks to make it all work, to make the parameters all run smoothly. And so depending on what you have, I'm always also open to telling them, hey, what kind of budget do you have in mind? What do you want to spend on this? And I can tell you what I can give you with this. And maybe I'll add a little extra because I like the project. Or just like you said, what's also an interesting way that I sometimes had in the past is not a revenue split, because most people are not comfortable with that. Because, I can understand it. As an indie person, if you're working on a game for like 6 years and then it becomes a big hit, you don't want to share like 10 or 20% to someone else. But what is interesting to me, what I sometimes offer is like a tiered thing, where I say like, okay, this is the price, and if you sell this many copies, then I get this additional on top, just a one sum. And maybe if you go over, I don't know, 100,000 sold copies, you give me another X amount. And that could also be interesting for them, because that means for both of you want the game to succeed, and for them it's not a big part of the additional pay if they get so many more sold copies. So, can also recommend that.
That's really nice too. We've done that before, and I think what's nice about that compared to revenue share is that they're not tied to a constant like reporting to you and every quarter and then paying out. And also with revenue share, there's always some kind of end date. Maybe it's 2 years. And maybe the game doesn't blow up until 3 years, and then you miss out, because I think no one wants to be tied to you in perpetuity, right? They don't want to be 20 years from now saying, here's your penny, for the, the 1 cent. So I think that's really important. The idea of saying, if you sell 10K units or 100K and then you get these small like add-on bonuses, that's a lot easier to achieve and to have someone agree to.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when you have the work, you have negotiated with the client and everything is fine, and then you start getting more clients. So how do you stay organized when you're juggling multiple projects at once? I can imagine that's being stressful.
Yeah, I think we probably have about maybe at least 4 clients at the same time going. And within some of those clients, there's multiple studios with multiple projects. So it is a lot. And I think we have a main project pipeline. So I use Trello, and I'm using TickTick. And then also a combination of like Google Sheets. I don't set up a like Jira or Confluence for my team internally, because ultimately our clients often have their own, and then we have 80 versions of logging into Jira or Confluence. So we get by with using Slack to communicate. Slack has some really nice like lists that you can create in there now, and really good reminders. So it's nice for like automating things a bit. And something like Trello or TickTick, where you're just creating cards and you have your list and the due dates. But I think it's important to consider what you're going to track, right? So you need like client info, which is, what time zone are they in? That's important too, because I know I have some Eastern European clients where I wake up around 7 a.m. and check in on them. And then my Australian clients, I stay up a little bit later and check in on them. Then I also have some clients in the US. And so during the day, I'm checking in on them. So I kind of like piece it out like break it out into those different groups. Also, I think figuring out like project scope and making sure you have a note somewhere on, what are your deliverables? When are they due, the milestones? And, what are those estimated hours, or how many assets do you need? And then also keeping track of status for each project. Like, this one's kind of on hold because we're awaiting feedback, or, this one, milestone 1 is complete, we're moving on to milestone 2. So I think every week I start off my Monday by just having a look. I spend like 1 to 2 hours just having a look at all of those things, and even invoicing. I work with our bookkeeper to make sure all of that's on track. And so this way I'm not having to look at it so much the rest of the week. I'm not really, I like to look at it less as juggling, more of as making a nice smooth pipeline, right? So I'm basically breaking down, the Monday morning is like admin stuff. It's, figuring out like project maps and answering emails. And then, maybe like the creative side, because I'm still doing a lot of that with my team. And the creative stuff comes in maybe, Monday afternoon, or I started on Tuesday. So I like to break things down like that. So it's expected. Because I find that with multiple clients, if you're constantly jumping back and forth, answering, a Slack here or a Discord there, it becomes a lot, and it's too much for your nervous system, right? So you eventually break down and you don't do anything then. So
yes.
So I think that's important, and also just making sure that you have enough time for those deadlines. And I ask my team, to always give me enough notice if you're going to be away or unavailable. So this way we're not stuck, right? I think that's really important. Everyone kind of has an idea of what's coming.
Yeah, and always get the ball rolling. I also use Trello, by the way, so I'm absolutely in that boat with you. The only thing I gripe with that is that I saw that Atlassian apparently bought it, so maybe it's gonna be turned into Jira slowly. So maybe we'll have to find something else.
I'm wondering. That's why I'm looking at TickTick at the moment. To kind of see. And I mean, but I think also another thing that we do is we automate what we can, right? So we have like project templates, there's obviously like even our bookkeeping has a process. So everything has a process, our writing templates, all of that. It helps kind of speed things up to make sure that we're efficient and we're getting things done. I think that's the most important part. You're not always starting from scratch every time that you begin something.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's stuff you can build up over time when you have the routine down, and just make yourself more effective and the whole team. It's good.
Yeah.
Speaking of other things, like what kind of skills outside of audio have helped you succeed in your business?
I think one of the things that I think I mentioned this during the Air Wiggles is having like an emotional intelligence, knowing how to kind of read the room, to manage client expectations. I've always had this good like kind of self-awareness that I can get gut feelings on things, and I think that's been really important. But I'm not sure like how, does everyone have that, or I can't speak to everyone, but I know that that's been really key for me because. Like I talked about the one project that just crumbled, and I realized I sensed something is going to happen. So I took the rest of my team off of it, and I just completed a month of work. And then they were like, "Oh, we're out of budget," and so I never got paid for that month. But that sort of knowing how to read the room, understanding what client expectations are really important. But a really big one, I think, that's hard for creatives is to take negative feedback gracefully, because not everyone's good at delivering feedback, right? So some people just say, I hate that. It's like, the other is, like also understanding when you have international clients, the cultural, like the nuances of language, right? I think I talked about this in Air Wiggles too, where I had a client in the UK that said, oh, it's quite good. And here quite good means really good. But to them, I later found that it meant, it's okay. So I didn't.
Subtleties.
Yeah, it's little subtleties like that. It's really important, right? So now I understand that, and that helps me navigate a bit better. But also I found that when I am dealing with international clients, especially, I ask if I'm unsure, especially the way things are phrased or stated. And we don't often say fortnight here. So whenever, unless we're playing the game. And so whenever like my Australian clients say, can you have that in a fortnight? I'm always like, got to remember what it means. And then, because it's just not something that we daily, say. So I think all of that stuff's important. But the biggest thing are the soft skills, like being able to, this is a business. If you're not going to work for a company in-house, just really understanding that you're going to be learning about pricing, contracts, marketing, and figuring out all those soft skills to give yourself the tools to run a sustainable studio and not just be a freelancer that's getting by, right? I think that's important. But you also have to have like project management, communication skills. So I've become better at scoping projects, setting timelines, but also knowing what documents teams might need. There's a team that I worked with just recently. They're part of a studio that I work with normally, but this is an outsourced team. And they gave a really nice compliment at a meeting recently. We had like a reflection, the end of the project kind of meeting. And the thing that they said was that, Gina's team, delivers a good amount of documentation. So we have, we use Jira, but I also send them a Word doc that says, look, this is a exported list from Jira. These are all of the audio bugs, and these are all the things that are important, because it can be really difficult, even in Jira, when you jump into it. You can search for things and whatnot, but I find that you never want to make someone else have to look for things, make their job harder. It's difficult. Yeah. That happens to me as a teacher, by the way, all the time. I get students that say, here's my work, and there's no link to it. They just expect me to assume where it might be. And it's very difficult. And I'm just like, now I've got to spend at least 5 to 10 minutes to figure out where is this work and tell me something about it, right? I think so. I've really learned that being detailed and kind of serving something, very useful with a guide, to your clients, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can attest to that. Like, especially don't take the feedback to heart. It's all about like the artistic output anyway. But still, also the kind of subtleties of language.
Yeah.
I had to laugh because I have this regional dialect here where essentially if you say to a meal like it's good enough to eat, it basically is the highest form of compliment, because people are a bit, I don't know, grumpy, or I don't know, maybe just sarcastic or something. So to others it says like, okay, I can almost eat this, it's fine, but for us it's actually a high compliment. So all these kinds of weird things where words don't necessarily mean what you expect them to mean is always funny to me. Fortnite, for example, I the first time I heard it actually was from the US, from Double Fine, because they had their Amnesia Fortnite where they do a game jam every 2 weeks, and I was like, what is a fortnight? It's like, okay, 2 weeks, apparently.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was from Australia. That's interesting.
Well, yeah, I know that. I don't know if that's like, and I know that there are some teams here that use it, but in the circle that I'm in, we never really say fortnight. And so my Australian team consistently says it when they say every 2 weeks. So yeah, it's just really tricky. I think never assume, right? That's a big thing. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask. I think that's important. But I think another skill too is really showing interest in people. I know that just working with different clients all over the world, and I always love having like mixed cultures, because you really learn a lot about the world, and instead of just being kind of siloed in your own little space. And the interesting thing is that you find that like different cultures have very like fun things. Like some love like line dancing, where I was just talking to my Australian clients about this nut bush dance, which is apparently like a line dance. And they were like, but you don't know, like Tina Turner used to do this. And I was like, no, I don't know of the nut bush dance. I think it's very cute, and I loved hearing about it. So, like just learning to build friendships, I think is important, right? These people, they're not just clients. They're, especially when you're working for a long time with them, and really just, understand like what they're all about. Give them some time to talk about themselves. And, I think things like that, those interpersonal relationships can be really helpful. It can be really, easy when you're working on a project. You can have all this stress of starting up a project and making it go forward that you can forget the human side. I think that's really important to kind of remind yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. At the end, we're just all human beings
Yes.
wanting to connect. Yeah.
Anytime I do
That's
like
great.
a podcast or I'm speaking, I always have a little note on the side that says, don't say, because that's like an easy thing to do, right? When people are in thought. Well, there, I just did it. So
But it's totally fun. I
Yes.
just had to laugh at that because my editor actually has like an image of all the ums, because she
Yes.
now can just realize where an is just by the image of the waveform.
I love it.
Which is really, really fun. It's like you can really spot them after a while of editing podcasts. It's like, oh yeah, this one is an You can just add it without listening. It's very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just said now.
Yes.
Very self-conscious now.
We've said it like 20 times now.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Just cut the whole, like, from
Yeah.
a minute ago till now.
Yeah, please, Faith, just cut that out.
Yes.
No, keep it in. It's fun. Yeah. One other thing I'd like to ask you, because I always ask it all of my guests, and we're already at the 1 hour mark, which is time flies when you.
It's always fun chatting with you. So
Yeah, thank you. Fun chatting with you as well. And your dog is amazing, by the way. He just sits on the pillow. I think it's a Moog, right? Or it's a kind of synthesizer.
yeah, the
pillow.
Moog pillow. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I want that pillow. But anyway, one of the questions I always ask my guests, and I've been like dying to hear it from you, is what was the first sound you ever recorded, and why did you record it?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting. The very first sound that I recorded was I was walking down the stairs and carrying a pint glass and like a metal tumbler, like a drink tumbler. Mm-hmm. And the two of them like clashed while I was holding both with my one hand. And they made this amazing like shing kind of sound. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like a, almost like a knife, like kind of like shing kind of sound.
Yeah.
So I was very excited about that. And I went out and bought this Olympus, I think it was like an LS10 or something. It was a very like small and affordable recorder. And I got it and I recreated that sound. But a really fun, interesting thing is recently we worked on a horror game, which hasn't released yet. So I won't be able to say what it is, but it required these knife slash sounds. And I used that classic pint glass and metal tumbler. Obviously, I didn't have the same ones, but it's a really like classic technique that a few of my friends in sound have used, but it's super satisfying. And it's really nice because you can control like the dynamics of it, right? Instead of just grabbing a library like Shing, you can control like how short they are, how like sharp the transient is, all of that stuff, like how long they are. So that was like a very fun memory. And I was just recently talking about it because we were doing like a behind the sound for this game. And we shot some video of some of the things we recorded to add in, our own Foley. And that was one of the things. And someone said, like, how do you even come up with this? And I was like, well, I was walking down the stairs and the two collided and that was history. But yeah, that was just one of my like early memories that's just recently come back into use, which is really nice.
Yeah, perfect. That was a perfect timing for the question then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so fun. Like these happy accidents, they happen to me all the time. And actually, that is also the thing that made me really interested in the recording part of the sound design part. Just like you said, because you're getting something from a library, but then it doesn't quite fit, and then you try to maybe edit it, but it's like, it's all just... It feels like a little amateurish butchering of sounds. So if you can like perform the sound, then you have so many more options to like, really, really play with that and see what you can bring out of that. And yeah, one of my earliest experiments was with a sword. I think I told the story before, but doesn't matter, not to you. I wanted to record sword sounds for this game I'm working on. I'm still working on, and I bought like this medieval sword because I always wanted to have something on my wall because it looks like gaming, and it's maybe I can get a lot of sounds. It was a business expense, of course, right? So I picked up the sword, and it looks amazing. And the first time I picked it up off the floor, it didn't make any sound. It's like totally nothing, like absolutely nothing. And I tried to excite it with anything, and it's just nope, like nothing at all. A friend of mine then told me like, just get a spatula and you get that kind of shing sound that you're looking for. Yeah. And of course that one is fine, but now I've at some point I've gotten some actually Foley swords which are so fun, and I'm actually doing a video on them soon, like how to build your own very cost-effective thing. And it's so cool having these kind of moments when you realize something doesn't make a sound at all that you expected it to. And I like for all my life before I tried this, I always thought if you would pick up a sword, it would make this kind of swing sound. And
Right.
I don't know. It's just it's just a pop culture thing. Of course, you have that in your mind, and I'm guessing the same goes for like actual gunshot sounds. If I hadn't heard a gun before, I mean, especially in Europe, you don't have gun ranges as much as in the US, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like the first time, many years ago, of course. But the first time I heard a real gun, I was like, oh, that's kind of unexciting. It's kind of a
Yeah.
I mean, it's really loud. It's painful. Like, of course, you have protection on, but it's a small kind of pop sound. It's
Pop a balloon.
so unexciting.
Yes.
Yeah, pop a balloon, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's so fun. And having the opposite of that is even more fun. Like just realizing that your door sounds amazing, just like an old barn door, and you don't oil it because you have this perfect door to record sounds from. It's so great.
Yeah, actually, I just purchased off of eBay these old adding machines, and the guy, I guess, wanted to get rid of them, so he sent me 2 that he had, even though I was just buying 1. And this 75-pound box arrives, and for those that don't use pounds, like, it's super heavy, and I pull out these beasts, but they're amazing because they've got these really great, like, mechanism, like, word-type sounds, tactile clicks, these jam noises. So I have this whole library of just like these like gear and cog type sounds. So I think it absolutely adding your own recordings. I love it. And I think I'll never stop doing it. It's like, because library sounds are great, but then there's something about like having the control of performing it that then adds that extra nuance to it,
Yeah. And nobody has exactly the same prop that you have.
Yeah.
I just have to ask, like, did you get 2 different machines or was it the same type?
Well, they're very similar, but they are slightly different. But to me, they sound very similar. So it was kind of like, now I've got this, I have a little Foley room here, and it's not enough to have all these adding machines. So I might have to put one somewhere else at some point. It's taking up a lot of space, but I appreciated it.
Just give it to a fellow sound designer.
Yeah, exactly. He was very excited when he said, well, what are you going to do with this, if you don't mind me asking? And I was like, I'm going to record sound of it. And he was like, very exciting. And then in the note, it was very sweet. It was like, well, I sent you both. Hopefully you can use it. And I was like, well, that's really nice and thoughtful. It was just super heavy, and they're just big.
Yeah, very heavy and unwieldy indeed. Yeah. I just recently got a very old like sound system from I'm guessing the 70s, maybe early 80s. Could also be 90s. I have no idea. It's a very old label. You can't read it anymore. And I was also pretty excited because old speakers always fun. But they're actually like ripped. Both of them are like the membranes were very thin. But the fun part is now I have 2 old speakers that are broken and I can feed sound into it and record it. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to try that next week or something. Like whatever kind of trash you get, just before you throw it away, just record it because you never know. We can get so many interesting sounds out of that.
Yeah, I'm always collecting. When we moved to Boston, my parents were helping me pack up my original house in New Jersey, and my mom was just like, lots of trash up here. And I was like, no, don't throw any of it away. It's not trash. It's all very important stuff. Just yesterday, I ordered a frame for like a little certificate that I received, and it came with this most amazing cardboard, and I was more excited than my cats about the cardboard. It was, so I like took it downstairs in my Foley room, and I'll probably use it for something at some point. But it's
of course.
Yeah, I go around. I love listening to things, and I go around knocking on things and just testing out spaces and kind of see what turns out to be interesting, because you never know what you can use it for.
Yeah, absolutely. And a YouTuber I like to watch, Laura Kampf, she said it's not junk if you organize it.
Yes.
So that's always my go-to answer now. It's like, no, it's not junk. It's all organized and it's for work. And
I did regret this one item. A friend was traveling, and she went to South Africa and came back with this, like, there was someone on the street was selling an amazing handheld, I don't even know what it was called, but it was like a percussive type instrument, and you would shake it and had all of these like shells that would just make these amazing sounds. And unfortunately, it dried up over the years. And just recently, I went into my Foley room, and there were these little like beads everywhere. And apparently, like, the shells broke open, and they're just like, the beads went all over the place. So I was like cleaning those up for hours.
Oh man,
They're
yeah.
everywhere.
But it's kind of fun though, because you
Yes.
can never record the same thing again. I mean, for me, it's like I have limited space because it's like I have a home office here and I have a little studio built in. But I have this one cabinet where it's like, okay, I keep my Foley junk in there.
Yeah.
Not junk, of course, the tools.
The tools,
But I
yeah.
always keep throwing stuff out and getting new stuff in. So I always try to, like, I don't know, keep the palette fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciated that little shaker, device or tool because I used it we worked with Nickelodeon on these like IDs that played in between of the different shows. And
Nice.
there was a Halloween one where the skeleton at the end just does a shake and then it collapses into like dust. And I used that little shaker for like the bone sounds. And we were actually nominated for an Emmy for that. So that was like, I was like, this is fantastic.
Awesome, perfect. So it fulfilled its purpose and then it
Yes.
just crumbled to dust.
Yeah,
Very, very poetic.
unfortunately it's gone. Yes. But
That's very poetic.
yeah.
Okay. So just for the finishing off of this podcast, like any projects you want to shout out or any persons, anything that's dear to your heart that you want to say?
Well, I think, just over the years, I've worked with so many amazing people, so it would be hard to mention them all. But I think, my team that I work with right now, we have a core group of people, like Spencer and Thor and Brandon, and Julie, who's running our studio. I'm very grateful to her. But also people like Jason, Jason Cantor, he's been coming in and out of my life, starting out with, we worked on a project that was in 2005 and it never ended up getting out there. Sony ended up canceling it, but we went on to BioShock 2 together. I just really appreciate the good people in my life. And I also appreciate you and our chats. This is a second fun chat. So I really appreciate you having me on here.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. It was amazing to chat with you. And yeah, I can also like attest to that. Like the people that you work with over the years, they become like fellow audio humans and friends. And I can just as a little last tip for everyone, just reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. I had so many like great things where I was stuck on a project once and I needed a specific like helicopter sound and I didn't want to spend, I don't know, 200 euros on just the library.
Yeah.
So I asked around and a friend of mine had recorded actually a military helicopter at some point.
Nice.
And I had this very perfect recording and he just gave it to me for free. So all these little niceties, just like you said, the community is so good. And yeah, also very great meeting you just by chance through Abigail's.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed this chat as well. So thank you for coming on the show and I wish you a nice weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Looking for more audio-related podcasts to listen to? We're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting on patreon.com/fieldandfoley or ko-fi.com/fieldandfoley, where you gain early access to episodes in lossless format and can submit questions for our guests. Thank you for listening.